Hey guys, it's Michael here. Most of you have probably seen this quad truck, but I got some new subscribers. Maybe you haven't seen these videos yet. This is a machine I built. It's been called many things. You know, a few haters have called it a monster, a few other things like that. But I think for the most part, most people really enjoyed seeing this project. I've had a lot of people view the different videos. I got 5 videos up so far of this thing, from pretty much taking this old broken down Chinese quad and pulling it out of pretty much the bushes, and should have been destined to the dump. And the engine was shot, and I ended up pulling the engine and put in a 6.5 horsepower little side shaft motor like you'd buy at Harbor Freight or something. The back suspension was completely blown out on it, so I got rid of the back suspension, made it a hardtail, kind of like a garden tractor would be. Extended the frame and did a dump bed, and then converted it over to a hydraulic dump bed with a Subaru power steering, rack and pinion, full system. So this front rack here is one of those little cut down modified, something you'd put on a tow hitch of a minivan or something, put firewood and sporting equipment on. It's kind of like an extra cargo carrier. Got it for free, and I cut it down and set it up on here, and just took some extra tubing and kind of welded out and made it stronger, and put some LED lighting up front here. The little motor puts out a little bit of 12-volt power, so I can run some LED lights on it. But yeah, it's geared way down. I did a lot of gearing adjustments. The stock quad had a forward and reversing gearbox, which is super helpful for utility stuff. And I was able to adapt the variator and the variable speed transmission to the stock transmission from the stock quad to the new motor. Yeah, it's been a fun project. I built this little rack here and here for carrying long beams, like 12-foot beams. I've hauled long chunks of metal siding on here, hauling tools. Firewood. It's just a really good utility machine. Some people in the past couldn't grasp the concept of a slow-moving utility vehicle like this. They couldn't understand why I'd get rid of the rear suspension. It still has the independent front suspension, works really well. But this machine I geared way down. It's only a 6.5 horsepower motor, so to get a lot of torque and power out of it, you have to gear it down a bit slower. And I think it maxes out about 15, 18 miles an hour, which is plenty good for me. I'm riding around tight trails around my property, and when you have piles of firewood in here, you really don't want to be going that fast anyways. I've had it probably about 450 to 500 pounds of loaded gravel in the back. That's about all you really want to haul on this thing, and it will dump it for sure. No problem with that now with the hydraulics. Pretty much what limits that is it's already a hell of a lot of weight on a little quad axle, and there's a point to where you just get much more weight than that, so it gets hard to steer because it's a solid axle, a straight axle in the back. But anyways, this little video we're just kind of putting together here. I want to talk to you guys about this a little bit, kind of breaking it out for the spring. I got a lot of firewood and different things to move and gravel, so we're just going to be kind of showing the many uses of the quad truck. And probably the future video I'll start getting back to finally powder coating the fenders and beautifying the machine a little bit, and tighten up a few loose ends on it. But this video is just going to be mainly just using it and the reasons why I built it. And this is one of the first jobs I really did with the Vulcan for aluminum welding. I adapted a Miller spool gun to the Vulcan welder I have, and welded up these fenders here. Some people are really afraid of these things. So one person said stupid front fenders or something like that. There's some trolls out there, man. People complained, said I was gonna cut my leg open on them. Yeah, maybe, man, but there's probably a lot worse things can hurt you out there than aluminum front fenders. But anyways, I think they turned out pretty damn good. I welded this whole box up for it, for the dump box, and it has a little tailgate that slides out. Pretty simple. Here's the other, this part slips in and out. This is the lumber carrier, lumber rack. And here's the side shaft motor. 6.5 horse. I would have probably went the Predator motor from Harbor Freight next time. This is something I got on Amazon or eBay, and I don't know, man. It's a very similar motor to all those other ones, but I don't think it's as good as the Predator motor I put on my log splitter I built. And this is the quad's original forward reversing gearbox. There's a gear lever here. You push and move this back and forth, and it's really nice to have a forward and reversing gearbox on this thing for being a utility machine. The original quad had awful gearing, so I actually modified it and changed the sprockets here, and in the back here I did some lathe work and fitted some different sprockets from my XR650 on there. This is part of the power steering valve that your extra steering wheel will go down into this. I got some vice grips on there for a temporary handle now. I need to finish that up this spring, but this is actually out of a rack and pinion. This is what I use for the hydraulic valve, and this is actually, you know, like the rod where your steering wheel shaft would go down into, and the whole rack and pinion would come off of here, and I cut the hydraulic off the rack and pinion, and I'll show you guys that underneath the bed here. Let me shut this thing off here. So yeah, there is the rack and pinion cylinder. This would actually go in both ways, and this valve here was actually mounted on part of this, and I cut it all apart and was able to reuse it all. And over on the other side here, I also got the Subaru power steering pump sitting right here. And yeah, just used the lines, and did a whole nother video on how I took this stuff apart and adapted it, and I will put a link to the video right up here if you guys are interested in it. I also welded on a ammo box here. Got tie down straps for hauling firewood, Allen wrenches, all kinds of tools, sockets and stuff, because it's super nice to have a roll around toolbox. Built up a kind of an ugly but big guard shield for the belts that are spinning down there, and just went for the tiny utility tank. The quad tank that was originally on here was a big bulky thing, and I'm just using it around my property. It's not like I'm going long distance. It was missing a seat. This came from a friend. It was off of a Honda or something that was all ripped up, so I reupholstered it with some pleather, and worked out pretty well. I was able to cut it to length. All right, lower this thing down. And around back here, there's a tow hitch. I welded up some framework here, got it supported pretty well here, and welded up a ball because I got a log splitter and log arch that I like to tow around here. So this is a little log arch I built about 3 years ago, and later in the video here I'll put a little link to how I built it. But anyways, I have a bandsaw mill I built from scratch about 4 years ago. And after building it, I realized it's quite hard to move around logs at the time. And at that time, I did not have a tractor. And it's one of those things, if you own a bandsaw mill or have operated it, you realize how fast blades get dull if you actually drag your logs around, because you're dragging dirt and rock into the bark. And it's really hard to get that stuff off and out, and it just gets dragged through the cut on the bandsaw, and your blades are shot really quickly. So the idea with this log arch is it actually picks the log off the ground, so you're not dragging dirt and rock into it, and that makes it a lot easier because it takes a lot less force to roll like a 600 or 400 pound log across the ground on wheels than it does to drag part of it. Yeah, it works out pretty well. So having the truck bed built into the quad truck is pretty useful, especially when you're hauling the log splitter around. I can hook it up on there, and I can tow it to a part of my property with log rounds, split it up, never have to take off the log splitter, throw all the wood in the back of the bed and on the front rack, and drive off to the next pile of wood I need to split. And unlike a regular quad where you'd have to disconnect the log splitter, hook on a trailer, haul it around, and go back and get it later, I can just do it in all one clean sweep. So it works out pretty well. It's a nice utility machine. And let's not forget one of the best uses for this thing as well is forget all the tools, forget all the firewood and all that stuff. Just hopping on it, riding around the property and having a good time like you would on a regular four-wheeler. Yeah, you might not be traveling as fast, but it's always a fun time just ripping around on the thing and having fun. One good thing these Chinese quads have going for them is they're always equipped usually with hydraulic disc brakes. So the disc brakes work pretty well. One nice thing. And if you kind of picture this thing as being a super maneuverable garden tractor that actually travels a lot quicker than a garden tractor, you know, it's got independent front suspension and hydraulic brakes down there, and yeah, it works pretty well. A lot of people can't fathom that 6.5 horses would move this thing around. It's just all about gearing, and it's like I'm not trying to go 40 with it. You know, you don't want to haul that much firewood and that gravel going 40 anyways. And yeah, I got a lot of hills in my property, so it's got to climb up hills pretty well. It is two-wheel drive. I wish it was a four-wheel drive. know, it was what I was working with. It was free, and yeah, it's working pretty good. All right, you guys, this is about probably all I want to haul around with this quad truck, mainly because so much weight's hanging off the back tail of the log arch that's kind of making the back wheels not planted into the ground as much as I would like. But you can see that we're on a little bit of a grade here. We got to climb the last little grade to go around to the mill, and I'll let off my back brake here and get rolling. Pull on my front brake, I'll show you guys. You can see it just wants to skid, so I'm gonna fire it up and show you guys how it pulls up this last grade. Alright, so this Doug fir log is about 12.5 feet. The skinny end just about 12 inches. The large end is 13.5. And we also got some scraps of wood in here, just some firewood scraps. But that's about all we want to haul with the thing. But you know what makes moving logs around a lot easier than any other way if you don't have much equipment. Of course, I do have the tractor, and that's quite useful as well, but it travels pretty slow, and it's just slow on the trails. It does what it needs to do pretty well, but this quad truck is a little more maneuverable on the tight trails, and quicker and not so top heavy. And they both do different services around here. Like this is much better for hauling firewood around and smaller, lighter loads, and anything much bigger than this I'd probably use the tractor for hauling with the log arch. If you guys are interested in how I built this, I did a video. I'll put a link in the upper corner over here. I did a video on how I built this a few years back, and I'll link it to that. Here's the quad truck in fine form, guys. This is why I built it. It's a back saver. Got a ladder rack here. It's usually a lumber rack. Got a generator, gas jug, air compressor, chop saw, circular saw, all kinds of tools in here for working. But yeah, it's a back saver. This thing's what it's all kind of designed for, is hauling stuff like this. So I had a few other people comment that a trailer pulled behind a quad would have done exactly the same thing. And you're probably right. A quad with a trailer, you know, just go out and buy a trailer, that's simple. But I think they missed the fact that I actually don't own a quad. I had a broken down piece of shit in the bushes that I converted over here for very, very cheap, well, probably 500 bucks or so. And it's turned out to be a pretty useful utility machine. So I think they missed the boat on that. That if you don't have a quad, how are you going to pull a trailer around? And one thing else I want to point out, of course, you know, this is a 212cc motor, real common. It's like a Honda knockoff, a Honda clone. I think they're claiming 7 horse. I think they can put whatever they want on it. The motor did pretty well when I first got it, but I've done a few upgrades, so it's probably putting out a little bit more horsepower now, but it actually moved everything around pretty well the way it was stock. I put a XR200 carb on here. I think I mentioned earlier in the video. Got rid of the stock exhaust and rerouted just a little one off a little Honda XR, I think 100. And what else? Oh yeah, I had a compression release brake because I forgot to pull the governor springs and all that stuff out. So the compression release on the cam broke, so I pulled apart the engine in I think one of the last videos, and I ended up putting a little bit more of a peppy, longer duration cam in the motor here. One other thing I ended up doing was, while I had the head off here, I ended up taking it to my milling machine and milling the head, shaving it down a little bit to increase the compression ratio. I think all these things improved a little bit. All right, you guys, well, we're nearing the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you guys are interested to see this whole series from start to this point, there's about 5 videos. I'll put a little link up here for a playlist. It's from taking out the bushes to pulling off the old motor, cutting the transmission in half, mounting a new engine, all that stuff, to a hydraulic dump bed, and to see all this stuff come along. So if you're interested, click on that playlist. And the next video coming out, we're going to get back into doing some more modifications to this thing, beautifying it, painting up the fenders, and I got a lot of other little additions I think are going to make it much more useful for around the property. So click like and subscribe so you can get notified when that next video comes out, and please share it. I'd really appreciate it. If you like this video and want to share it with some others, please help yourself to share it. And I've had a few people link in the comment section some quad trucks and different projects they've worked on since, and one guy linked me to a video. He built a really awesome diesel quad contraption. It's pretty awesome, and I think he used like a Volkswagen engine, and it's pretty massive. And another guy from Japan linked me to a little video he did with a little quad truck smaller than this, but pretty neat. And so if you guys, I've had quite a few people talk about being inspired to build one of these over the last 5 videos. If you've done a project like this and you built it and you got a video of it, please link to it in a video in the comment section below. I'd love to check it out. Alright you guys, until next time, take care. Bye.